A common question new photographers have is, what is RAW and JPEG? What are the differences, and which one should I be shooting at? So we just want to go over the differences between them and hopefully give you guys an idea of which one would be better for you. Alright, so let's talk about RAW first. So RAW is an uncompressed, unprocessed file. So usually if you're shooting in RAW, you can even notice that the image looks really flat. There's no contrast to it. And the reason is because it's unprocessed. The cool thing about this is that they have a great dynamic range. And when I say dynamic range, what I'm talking about is the brightest parts of the highlights in your photo and the darkest parts of the shadows in your photo. So if you're shooting in RAW, you're still going to have all that information to play with in post-processing. Now, because the RAW file is unprocessed, you're going to have to use a computer program like Aperture or Lightroom or Photoshop or even iPhoto to process those images. Alright, so let's talk about JPEG files. So with RAW files, you are doing the processing with the computer program. JPEGs though, your camera is actually doing that processing for you. So when you take an image, it's adding the contrast and the brightness and the sharpening right there in your camera. So it's basically choosing what to keep out of that information that was taken in and throwing some things out. So you're going to have a harder time trying to bring in the highlights and the shadows if you're wanting to edit your photos in post-processing. One cool thing about shooting in JPEG is that your images are ready to go straight from the camera because that processing has already taken place. So if you're the kind of shooter that likes to just take photos, put them on your computer, send them to the Facebook, or go straight to printing, then JPEG is a great option for you. So let's talk about some times when we probably want to be shooting in RAW. I shoot in RAW a lot because I usually photograph weddings, and at weddings I can be running inside and outside and the lighting is always changing on me. So I'm shooting manual mode, and sometimes if I'm going from inside the building running outside to get a new shot, my exposure might be off. And so if I'm shooting in RAW, I'm going to have that dynamic range there to work with and create a properly exposed image. To whereas if I was shooting in JPEG and the photo is totally blown out, then I might not be able to save that image. So when do we want to be shooting in JPEG? So if you're the type of photographer that doesn't want to mess with the editing and you want to let your camera do that for you, then JPEG is a great option because your photos are ready to go straight out of the camera. If you have a small memory card or not much memory on your computer, you also probably want to be shooting in JPEG because the JPEG files are a lot smaller than the RAW files. So you don't have to worry about your card filling up too fast on you. Alright, so hopefully you guys have a good understanding of RAW and JPEG and the differences between them. For me, the biggest difference between them is that dynamic range that we keep talking about. Being able to save photos that are overexposed or underexposed. So now I want to take you guys inside my computer and show you some differences and actually work on some overexposed and underexposed images and show you how we can fix that exposure better in RAW versus JPEG. Okay, so here we are inside of my computer. I'm using Aperture to edit these photos, and I really just want to show you the difference between RAW and JPEG and why I choose to shoot in RAW just because of its ability to save photos that are overexposed or underexposed. So here's a photo of my son. I saw he was being awesome and cute in the backyard, so I went and grabbed my camera really fast and just ran out there, and before I had time to nail the perfect exposure, I just wanted to take a photo. So as you can see, this photo is really blown out. It's very overexposed. And I want to take you to I'm going to go into full screen mode here. So this is the original image. Now, this is the RAW version after post-processing, and this is the JPEG version after post-processing. So trying to fix that exposure. And so I just want to show you guys, so let's go back. So you can see I'm at the exposure right here. And this is what it was originally. That's the original. You can see it's really bright, really overexposed. But if I drag this down, I can make it spot on. Now let's go over to the JPEG version. So here I'm just restoring the exposure to its original setting. And you can see in this version, when I'm going to start to drag this exposure level down to make it a properly exposed image, it really loses a lot of quality, and I mean, it really just looks it looks awful. So yeah, you can just see the power of shooting in RAW really gives you the ability to save images that are overexposed that you might otherwise just have to delete because they're no good. So you can see on the left here is a JPEG, and on the right here is the RAW file. So this photo right here is exactly why I choose to shoot in RAW. A lot of times I just want to snap a photo and I don't have time to get the exposure perfect, and I want to have that leeway in post-processing to be able to save that photo. So with RAW, I know I can do that. Hopefully we answered any questions that you had about RAW and JPEG. If we missed anything, feel free to hit us up on our Facebook page.